On a snow-swept road in rural France, a wealthy woman mysteriously vanishes without a trace. What begins as a simple missing person case soon fractures into 5 tangled stories. Each is driven by hidden desires, each conceals a dangerous secret, and together their lives form a dark puzzle that reveals how love, lust, and lies can turn ordinary people into beasts. In today's recap, we bring you another suspense thriller titled Only the Animals. Our story begins in a remote, green-tinted small town in France. The residents here live lives of quiet despair year after year. Alice, a married housewife, works as an insurance agent in town. One morning after a snowstorm, she uses the excuse of visiting a client to sneak off to her lover, Joseph's house. Joseph is a reclusive, middle-aged man who runs a farm alone. The two had met when Alice was selling insurance, and their relationship slowly developed into an affair. Recently, their romance had been burning hot. But on this particular morning, Joseph seemed distracted, even when Alice threw herself into his arms. Since she still had other clients to visit later, she decided to leave. On the way back, she drove past a car parked by the roadside. Strangely, the car was empty, covered with a layer of snow. Alice felt puzzled. There were no villages or shops nearby, so why would anyone leave their car in such a place? That night, the local TV news solved her mystery. The car belonged to a wealthy woman named Evelyne, who was now reported missing. Her husband, Guillaume, was a businessman who spent most of his time abroad. Evelyne usually lived alone in a villa in the mountains. Just as Alice was staring at the news in a daze, the town sheriff came knocking. He was on good terms with her and admitted that the police had no leads on Evelyne's disappearance. Since Alice interacted with many townsfolk through her job, he hoped she might know something useful. Unfortunately, she had never heard of Evelyn and wasn't familiar with her. The sheriff then asked if she knew Joseph. From his tone, Alice realized the police already suspected Joseph. To protect her lover, she insisted that although Joseph was a loner, he wasn't a bad man and probably had nothing to do with Evelyn's disappearance. While they were talking, Alice's husband, Michel, returned home. He ran a livestock farm and usually spent his days there. When questioned by the sheriff, Michel grew impatient, saying he was too busy with work to bother about others' affairs. He provided no useful information and bluntly asked the sheriff to leave. After the sheriff left, Michel confronted his wife directly about her affair with Joseph. With disdain, he mocked her, warning that if Joseph dumped her one day, she shouldn't come crawling back in tears. With that, he stormed out, leaving Alice stunned. Her secret was no secret at all. Worried that Michel might harm Joseph in revenge, Alice rushed to the farm early the next morning to warn him. But she couldn't find him. Instead, she stumbled upon the corpse of Joseph's beloved dog in the hay storage. Terrified, she suspected that her husband had killed the dog and might have already attacked Joseph too. Just as she panicked, Joseph suddenly appeared alive. But his demeanor was strange. He bluntly broke up with her and drove her off the farm without explanation. Alice guessed he had been threatened by her husband. Since their relationship was never more than a fleeting affair, she decided to let go and reconcile with her husband. That evening, she prepared a special dinner and brought it to Michel's farm as a peace offering. But she overheard him on the phone, speaking words like lawsuit and charges. Thinking he was in trouble, she asked about it, but he ignored her. After hanging up, he drove off in silence. Late that night, Michel finally returned. His body injured, his face stained with fresh blood. No matter how Alice pressed him with concern, he stayed silent, moving like a soulless zombie. Alice quickly tended to her husband's wounds and coaxed him to sleep. But the next morning, Michel had disappeared again. After searching in vain, Alice had no choice but to call the police. Soon, the police discovered Michel's car abandoned on a remote roadside, eerily similar to the circumstances of Evelyne's disappearance. Could both cases have been committed by the same killer? Was Alice's lover, Joseph, really the murderer? Hold on, let's switch to Joseph's perspective to see what strange events he experienced. On the day Evelyn went missing, when Alice came over to throw herself into his arms, Joseph seemed absent-minded. That was because, just before she arrived, he had found a woman's corpse at his doorstep. The dead woman was Evelyn. Cause of death, strangulation. Joseph had never met her before, but afraid of being implicated in a murder case, he neither called the police nor told Alice the truth. After she left, he planned to drag the body into the forest and bury it. But strangely, he didn't. Instead, he built a makeshift hidden room in his hay storage and hid the corpse inside. Then, bizarrely, he lay down next to the dead woman and fell into a sweet sleep. It turned out Joseph had grown up in a single-parent family deeply attached to his mother, developing a severe Oedipus complex. After his mother passed away unwilling to part with her, he secretly kept her corpse in his room and slept beside it every night. This gradually developed into necrophilia. Only when her body had decayed did he finally bury her. So, when he found Evelyn's corpse, this dark obsession was reawakened. That was why he chose to hide her body instead of reporting it. But the next morning, his beloved dog sniffed out the corpse and dragged it from the hiding place. To conceal his perversion, Joseph shot and killed the dog, then dragged Evelyn's body back into the hidden room. At that exact moment, Alice came by for their usual affair. After emerging from the secret room, Joseph abruptly broke up with her and drove her away. His reasons were twofold. First, he feared she might discover the corpse, and second, he now had a new lover and no longer needed to sneak around with her. After Alice left, Joseph carried Evelyn's corpse on his back to a desolate wilderness. Finding a deep, natural pit, he tossed the body inside, then jumped in himself, as if only by doing so could he find eternal peace. But of course, the film doesn't end there. The mystery of Evelyn's death is still unsolved. So let's shift perspectives again to the victim herself, Evelyne, and see what she went through. 2 weeks earlier, while her husband Guillaume was abroad, Evelyn grew restless and bored. She drove into the city to pass the time. One night, dining in a restaurant, she met Marion, a waitress with fair skin and curly blonde hair. Marion was instantly captivated by Evelyn's mature charm and took the initiative to strike up a conversation. Evelyn, unrestrained in her desires, gladly accepted her advances. After several nights of passion, Marion discovered that Evelyn was actually married. For Evelyn, their affair was nothing more than a way to spice up her dull life. But Marion, hopelessly love-struck, fell deeply into the relationship. When Evelyn returned to her small town, Marion quit her restaurant job and followed her there, hoping to surprise her beloved. Because the town was remote and lacked direct transport, Marion had to hitchhike. By coincidence, she flagged down Michel in Alice's car. But just as she was about to get in, Michel suddenly changed his mind, refused to take her, and sped off. Luckily, she managed to catch another ride and eventually reached Evelyne's villa. Yet her arrival brought not joy, but shock to Evelyne. Unwilling to entangle herself further, Evelyn refused to let Marion stay the night and urged her to leave town at once. It was only then that Marion realized she was not welcome. Still, she hoped her sincerity would win Evelyn back. She found a cheap RV park nearby and settled in temporarily. That night, alone in the camper, Marion sensed someone peeping at her through the window. When she turned, a shadow flickered past. Terrified in the unfamiliar place, she immediately called Evelyn, asking her to come keep her company. But Evelyn coldly refused. Marion felt both aggrieved and helpless, yet she still longed to salvage their relationship. In the following days, Marion kept trying to please Evelyn, but Evelyn remained cold as ice, always finding excuses to avoid her. One afternoon, Marion discovered an envelope slipped under the door of her rented RV. Inside was 500 euros in cash. She assumed Evelyn had sent it as breakup money, trying to buy her off. Feeling deeply insulted, Marion angrily called Evelyn and cursed her out over the phone. That night, a heavy snowstorm fell. Evelyn drove alone to Marion's RV park. Marion thought she had come to apologize, but instead Evelyn bluntly broke up with her, saying her husband Guillaume would soon return, and she did not want to abandon her family to be with Marion. At that moment, all of Marion's suppressed pain and grievance exploded. She cried and screamed at Evelyn, but Evelyn had grown utterly fed up. She slapped Marion hard across the face, then drove off into the night. In the darkness, another car quietly followed Evelyn's vehicle. The next morning, the town sheriff came to question Marion. It turned out Evelyn had mysteriously disappeared after leaving the RV park the previous night. After investigation, the police confirmed that the last person to see Evelyn alive was none other than Marion. But Marion knew nothing. After their fight, she had planned to leave town, but upon hearing of Evelyn's disappearance, she decided to stay and wait for news. To her shock, the next night she did not receive any news of Evelyn. Instead, she received a strange visitor. A man broke into her RV, trying to force himself on her, babbling about eloping together, speaking as if they were already close lovers. That man was none other than Michel, Alice's husband. Marion was terrified and utterly confused by his actions. While struggling to resist, she kicked him hard in the face, leaving him bloodied. Humiliated, he fled the RV park and went back home. So here's the question. Why did Michel come to Marion claiming he wanted to elope with her? And how was he connected to Evelyn's disappearance? Let's switch perspectives once again to Michel's bizarre story. Over a month earlier, Michel had already noticed his wife's affair with Joseph. But since he no longer had feelings for her, he turned a blind eye. His estranged marriage, combined with the dull monotony of farm life, left him feeling lonely and empty. So he turned to the internet for excitement and soon connected with a woman online named Amandine. From her photos, Amandine appeared to be a young, beautiful French girl, strikingly similar in appearance to Marion. Fair-skinned, curly blonde hair, brimming with youthful vitality. For a middle-aged man like Michel, she was irresistible. The two quickly fell into a passionate relationship, but what Michel never realized was that Amandine was actually a catfish account run by a young African man named Armand. Armand came from a small African country once colonized by France, which was why he spoke fluent French. He was part of a scam syndicate specializing in preying on lonely French men. They bought stolen photos and explicit videos of young women, then posed as them online to lure victims. Michel was their latest target. Once Armand had gained Michel's trust, he began inventing excuses for money, claiming poverty, sick parents, endless hardships. Michel, not very bright and blinded by love, failed to recognize the scam. He poured money into Armand's pockets again and again, willingly sacrificing his hard-earned income. Armand used the swindled money to buy an expensive necklace for his ex-girlfriend Monique, hoping to win her back, but she coldly rejected him. Monique and Armand had a daughter together, but because Armand was irresponsible and jobless, Monique had left him and raised the child alone. Recently, she had been kept by a wealthy French businessman living in luxury and security. Naturally, she had no intention of returning to a penniless man like Armand. But Armand believed that if he could cheat enough money, Monique would eventually come back. Thus, he intensified his scam, squeezing Michel for more and more. To evoke sympathy, Armand even sent Michel a photo of Amandine with a head injury, claiming she had been beaten by debt collectors who also stole all the money he had previously sent. Seeing his beloved Amandine injured, Michel was heartbroken. He invited her to come to his small town and promised to protect her. Armand pretended to accept Michel's invitation, but demanded a large sum of travel money. The very next day, as Michel and his wife were driving home, they happened to encounter Marion, who was trying to hitch a ride. When Michel saw her face, he mistook her for his online lover, Amandine. But since his wife was in the car, he feared she might discover his secret affair. So, instead of picking Marion up, he stepped on the gas and sped away. Back home, Michel hurriedly sent a message online telling Amandine that he had just seen her but couldn't stop because his wife was there. On the other end, Armand was completely baffled. Could it be that Michel had actually met the girl in the photos? To keep his scam going, Armand lied, claiming he really was in town but couldn't meet Michel yet due to special reasons. Michel believed it wholeheartedly. Outwardly, he agreed to wait, but inwardly, he was burning with impatience. He searched through every inn in the town until he finally spotted Marion at the RV park. That night, when Marion sensed someone peeping at her window, the peeper was none other than Michel. Once he confirmed her location, he even slipped 500 euros in cash under her door, worrying his beloved was short on money. But this led Marion to believe the cash was breakup money from Evelyn, sparking her fury. Afterward, Michel even boasted online to Amandine about his generosity. At that moment, Armand realized the scam was about to collapse. To squeeze one last payout, he told Michel he couldn't meet him because debt collectors had followed him to the town. He feared dragging Michel into trouble. But if Michel could send one more payment, he might be able to buy them off. Blinded by love, Michel wasn't worried about himself at all. Upon hearing his beloved was in danger, he rushed to the RV park at night, hoping to help. There, he happened to witness Evelyn slapping Marion. Mistakenly believing Evelyn was the so-called debt collector who had been harassing Amandine, Michel decided to eliminate the problem once and for all. He secretly tailed Evelyn, forced her car to stop on a desolate road, and strangled her to death. After the killing, he thought of his wife's lover, Joseph. To frame him, Michel dumped Evelyn's corpse at Joseph's doorstep. The next morning, he once again messaged Amandine, proudly claiming he had taken care of the debt collector. Armand, reading this, was utterly dumbfounded. Before he could figure out what was happening, the police raided their scam hideout and arrested him. The following night, police from Armand's country phoned Michel, informing him that his online lover was, in fact, a scammer, and worse, a man. Michel was devastated. He refused to believe it, unwilling to accept that the woman he obsessed over was a fraud, and a male one at that. Consumed with anger, he decided to confront Marion face to face, mistaking her yet again for Amandine. But she, completely confused, kicked him in the face, sending him home bloodied. Sleepless and desperate, Michel realized he needed to cover up his accidental murder of Evelyn, and also seek closure for himself. While his wife slept, he drove away in the middle of the night, abandoning his car on the roadside to stage his own disappearance. That way, the police would surely connect his missing case with Evelyne's, and even if her body was discovered, suspicion would not fall on him. Afterward, Michel traveled to Armand's country. By then, since Michel refused to press charges, Armand had already been released by the local police. Through twists and turns, Michel finally tracked him down and cornered him in a deserted alley, ready to strangle him in revenge. But at the last moment, Michel let him go, as if he really did harbor some twisted affection for this brother Armand. Back at his hotel, Michel once again opened the chat app and reread his sweet exchanges with Amandine. He felt an indescribable emptiness and loneliness. What he hated wasn't that Armand had stolen his money, but that Armand had destroyed his fantasy of true love. Just then, a new message arrived from Amandine's account. Clearly, another scammer had taken it over to begin a new round of fraud. Yet, to Michel, this didn't matter. He happily began chatting again. For him, it no longer mattered who was really on the other side of the screen. What mattered was that he could continue his dreamlike romance with Amandine. In the end, Evelyne's wealthy husband, Guillaume, returned to town bringing with him a black woman and her daughter. The woman was none other than Armand's ex-girlfriend, Monique. It turned out that the rich man who was keeping her was Guillaume himself. Guillaume, with his peculiar fetish for women of different skin colors, was more than willing to spend generously on Monique and her daughter. Like Prisoners and The Devil All the Time that we've already reviewed, this film adopts a puzzle-like narrative, shuffling the timeline and stitching together fragments to form the complete story. Its special feature lies in its title and underlying theme. Every character is driven by strong desires. Joseph longs for a mother's love. Alice craves passion. Michel yearns for youthful women. Marion hopes for eternal love. Evelyn seeks excitement. Armand lusts for money. Guillaume indulges in exotic pleasures. Monique desires material wealth. But these desires are restricted by reality, marriage, morality, poverty, or social norms, so they pursue them in ways society cannot accept. Necrophilia, secret affairs, hidden relationships, elaborate scams, and so much more.